We got to let people join anyway. Hi.
Right.
Good evening, everybody. We're live, Jeremy.
Okay.
Welcome to Lives of the Saints, episode 17. And we're going to do St. John Chrysostom today. I'm excited about this one.
Tomorrow is his name day.
Yeah.
So.
And from my little parish in Kamloops, which I never attend, I got a note that it's also St. Martin of Tours today.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Maybe we can do him next time or something.
We already did him.
We did?
Oh, yeah, I shared the life of St. Martin of Tours.
Oh.
At your request, you asked me to do more Western saints, and I was like, "Oh, great! I'll do St. Martin of Tours."
Okay.
I was reading a book. My priest had told me to read his life,
right?
And I had a book of his life, so
okay. So now I'm officially embarrassed.
No, it's fine. No problem. It's okay.
Okay, tell me.
I have to
just remind me again.
Anyway. St. Martin of Tours.
Mm-hmm.
He was the one who was wealthy. He cut off. Remember, he had already given his money away to the poor people, and he cut off half of his cape because it was the only thing he had left.
Okay.
And he gave it to the homeless guy and to the poor man, and then Christ appeared to him that night wearing it and honored him. So
yes,
that's like the main story from his life.
Did he also get separated from his wife and his son or something? His two sons? Or was that somebody else?
That's a different story. That's a different story. That's a different saint. That's a great story, though.
We're gonna have to do like weekly quizzes just so that we can remember these people. Yeah. Yes. So St. John Chrysostom, he's a very important figure in.
There's a couple. He's made so many contributions to the church that are still in place. So he wrote the current version of the Divine Liturgy that we use most of the year. There's 3 versions in total that we use. We use St. John Chrysostom's Divine Liturgy. Then there's St. Basil the Great's Divine Liturgy. It's longer and more detailed. We use that during Great Lent. And then there's the Divine Liturgy of St. James, the brother of Christ. And we use that, I think, on Nativity and one other day. I can't remember.
Okay.
For sure. But yeah, so most of the year we hear the Divine Liturgy as written by St. John Chrysostom.
Okay.
Also, I think in this version, I've read like 3 versions of his life today, so I get a little fuzzy on which version has which stories. But if it doesn't mention it in here, then we'll talk more about his involvement with St. Paul as well. There's some interesting connection there. As far as St. John Chrysostom he was writing a commentary on the scriptures.
Okay.
And St. Paul was involved with that in a miraculous way.
Really?
Yeah. So we still have St. John Chrysostom's ear. And that also feeds into that story. So there's a little teaser.
Okay, cool.
I dropped my glasses, sorry. And then also he also gave a very famous and popular homily on Pascha, and it is read on Pascha during Divine Liturgy in most parishes. I think there's a few that don't, but very few. Most parishes read St. John Chrysostom's liturgy his homily from Pascha on the night of Pascha when we celebrate it. So I also have that. We can share that too.
Yeah, that'd be good.
It's very beautiful.
Is this across the board in Eastern Orthodoxy? Like, so the Russian Church, the Antiochian, the Greek, it's all the same. Okay.
Yep, they all do St. John Chrysostom's homily on Pascha.
And the liturgy.
Yep. And the liturgy, yep, that's correct. Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
All right. Well,
and it was written in the 5th century, in the early 5th century. So it's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
There's still vestiges of it in especially in the Latin Mass. there are like the litanies. There's a couple of litanies that are in common, and there's a few other parts of divine liturgy that are in there. I mean, like the communion prayers are similar in the Latin Mass, but Novus Ordo doesn't. It has a little bit of crossover with the divine liturgy, but not very much. It's hard to, if you're not really familiar with divine liturgy, you would miss it.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Interesting.
So.
Yeah, well, we can get started.
Okay. Do we have anybody here?
We have 6 people here.
6 people. All right. That's good. Glory to God. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
And I pray that we can have the prayers of St. John Chrysostom to help us as we share his life.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess I'll share my screen. As we share his life, I'll share my screen.
Hi, Cassandra.
Yes. And yeah, depending on how much time we have or how long this takes, I have a couple of other like experiences from his life in this very large tome of Lives of the Saints. If you can see that,
wow.
This is just for November. This is a huge collection of Lives of the Saints. It's great. But anyway, I will get started. St. John Chrysostom, Archbishop of Constantinople, commemorated on November 13th, which is tomorrow. St. John Chrysostom, Archbishop of Constantinople, one of the 3 hierarchs, was born at Antioch in about the year 347 into the family of a military commander. His father, Secundus, died soon after the birth of his son. His mother, Anthusa, widowed at 23 years of age, did not seek to remarry, but rather devoted all her efforts to the raising of her son in Christian piety. The youth studied under the finest philosophers and rhetoricians, but scorning the vain disciplines of pagan knowledge, the future hierarch turned himself to the profound study of Holy Scripture and prayerful contemplation. Saint Meletius, Bishop of Antioch, loved John like a son, guided him in the faith, and in the year 367 baptized him. So he was 20 years old. After 3 years, John was tonsured as a reader. When Saint Meletius had been sent into exile by the Emperor Valens in the year 372, John and Theodore, afterwards Bishop of Mopsuestia, studied under the experienced instructors of ascetic life, the presbyters Flavian and Diodorus of Tarsus. The highly refined Diodorus had a particular influence upon the youth. When John's mother died, he embraced monasticism, which he called the true philosophy. Soon John and his friend Basil were being considered as candidates for the episcopal office, and they decided to withdraw into the wilderness to avoid this. While St. John avoided the episcopal rank out of humility, he secretly assisted in Basil's consecration. During this period, St. John wrote his 6 discourses on the priesthood, a great work of orthodox pastoral theology. The saint spent 4 years struggling in the wilderness, living the ascetic life under the guidance of an experienced spiritual guide. And here he wrote 3 books entitled Against the Opponents of Those Attracted to the Monastic Life, and a collection entitled A Comparison of the Monk with the Emperor, also known as Comparison of Imperial Power, Wealth, and Eminence with the True and Christian Wisdom-Loving Monastic Life. Both works, which are marked by a profound reflection of the worthiness of the monastic vocation. For 2 years, the saint lived in a cave in complete silence, but was obliged to return to Antioch to recover his health. Saint Meletius, the Bishop of Antioch, ordained him deacon in the year 381. The following years were devoted to work on new theological writings concerning providence, to the ascetic Stegerios, a book concerning virginity, to a young widow, which is 2 discourses, and the book of Saint Babylos, and against Julian and the pagans. In the year 386, St. John was ordained presbyter by Bishop Flavian of Antioch. St. John was a splendid preacher, and his inspired words earned him the name golden-mouthed or golden-tongued, which is what Chrysostom means. For 12 years, the saint preached in church, usually twice a week, but sometimes daily, deeply stirring the hearts of his listeners. In his pastoral zeal to provide Christians with a better understanding of Holy Scripture, St. John employed hermeneutics, an interpretation and analysis of the Word of God, i.e., exegesis. Among his exegetical works are commentaries on entire books of the Holy Scripture, Genesis, the Psalter, the Gospels of Matthew and John, and the epistles of the Apostle Paul, and also many homilies on individual texts of the Holy Bible, but also instructions on the feast days, laudations on the saints, and also apologetic homilies against Anomians, Judaizers, and pagans. As a priest, St. John zealously fulfilled the Lord's command to care for the needy. Under St. John, the Antiochian church provided sustenance each day to as many as 3,000 virgins and widows, not including in this number the shut-ins, wanderers, and the sick. St. John began his commentary on Genesis at the beginning of Great Lent in 388, preaching 32 homilies during the 40-day period. During Holy Week, he spoke of how Christ was betrayed and about the cross. During Bright Week, which is the week after Pascha, his pastoral discourse was devoted to the resurrection. His exegesis of the book of Genesis was concluded only at the end of October. At Pascha in the following year, the saint began his homilies on the Gospel of John, and toward the end of the year 389, he took up the Gospel of Matthew. In the year 391, the Christians of Antioch listened to his commentary on the epistles of the Holy Apostle Paul to the Romans and to the Corinthians. In 393, he explained the epistles to the Galatians, the Ephesians, Timothy, Titus, and the Psalms. In his homily on the epistle to the Ephesians, St. John denounced a schism in Antioch. Quote, "I tell you, and I witness before you, that to tear asunder the church means nothing less than to fall into heresy. The church is the house of the Heavenly Father, one body and one spirit." Unquote. The fame of the holy preacher grew, and in the year 397, with the death of Archbishop Nectarius of Constantinople, successor to St. Gregory the theologian, St. John Chrysostom was summoned from Antioch and elected to the see of Constantinople. At the capital, the holy archpastor was not able to preach as often as he had in Antioch. Many matters awaited the saint's attention, and he began with the most important, the spiritual perfection of the priesthood. He himself was the best example of this. The financial means apportioned for the archbishop were channeled by the saint into the upkeep of several hospices for the sick and 2 hostels for pilgrims. He fasted strictly and ate very little food, and usually refused invitations to dine because of his delicate stomach. The saint's zeal in spreading the Christian faith extended not only to the inhabitants of Constantinople, but also to Thrace, including Slavs and Goths, and to Asia Minor and the Pontine region. He established a bishop for the Bosphorus Church in the Crimea. St. John sent off zealous missionaries to Phoenicia, to Persia, and to the Scythians to convert pagans to Christ. He also wrote letters to Syria to bring back the Marcionites into the church, and he accomplished this. Preserving the unity of the church, the saint would not permit a powerful Gothic military commander who wanted the emperor to reward his bravery in battle to open an Arian church in Constantinople. The saint exerted much effort in enhancing the splendor of the church services. He compiled a liturgy. He introduced antiphonal singing for the all-night vigil, and he wrote several prayers for the rite of anointing the sick with oil. The saintly hierarch denounced the dissolute morals of the people in the capital, especially at the imperial court, irrespective of person. When the Empress Eudoxia connived to confiscate the last properties of the widow and children of a disgraced dignitary, the saint rose to their defense. The arrogant empress would not relent and nursed a grudge against the archpastor. Eudoxia's hatred of the saint blazed forth anew when malefactors told her that the saint apparently had her in mind during his sermon on vain women. A court was convened, composed of hierarchs who had been justly condemned by Chrysostom. Theophilus of Alexandria, Bishop Severian of Gabala, who had been banished from the capital because of improprieties, and others. This court of judgment declared St. John deposed and that he be executed for his insult to the empress. The emperor decided on exile instead of execution. An angry crowd gathered at the church, resolved to defend their pastor. In order to avoid a riot, St. John submitted to the authorities. That very night there was an earthquake at Constantinople. The terrified Eudoxia urgently requested the emperor to bring the saint back and promptly sent a letter to the banished pastor, beseeching him to return. Once more, in the capital church, the saint praised the Lord in a short talk for all his ways. The slanderers fled to Alexandria, but after only 2 months, a new denunciation provoked the wrath of Eudoxia. In March 404, an unjust council was convened, decreeing the exile of St. John. Upon his removal from the capital, a fire reduced the church of Hagia Sophia and also the Senate building to ashes. Devastating barbarian incursions soon followed, and Eudoxia died in October 404. Even pagans regarded these events as God's punishment for the unjust judgment against the saint. In Armenia, the saint strove all the more to encourage his spiritual children. In numerous letters, 245 of which are preserved, to bishops in Asia, Africa, Europe, and particularly to his friends in Constantinople, St. John consoled the suffering, guiding and giving support to his followers. In the winter of 406, St. John was confined to his bed with sickness, but his enemies were not to be appeased. From the capital came orders to transfer St. John to desolate Pityus in Abkhazia in the Black Sea. Worn out by sickness, the saint began his final journey under military escort by foot. It was a forced march, traveling for 3 months in the rain and frost. He never arrived at his place of exile, for his strength failed him at Comana. At the crypt of St. Basilicus, St. John was comforted by the vision of the martyr, who said, "Despair not, Brother John. Tomorrow we shall be together." After receiving the holy mysteries, the hierarch fell asleep in the Lord on September 14th, 407. His last words were, "Glory to God for all things." The holy relics of St. John Chrysostom were solemnly transferred to Constantinople in the year 438. The disciple of St. John, the Venerable Isidore of Pelusium wrote, "The house of David is grown strong, and the house of Saul enfeebled. He is victor over the storms of life and has entered into heavenly repose." Although he died on September 14th, St. John's celebration was transferred to this day because of the feast of the elevation of the Holy Cross. St. John Chrysostom is also celebrated on January 27th and January 30th. Okay, so that did not include the story that I was hoping was in there, but it's not. So I will read this one from my giant tome.
Okay, cool.
The saint is visited. As we have mentioned, the saint was very skilled in preaching and giving the correct meaning of the spirit of the sacred scriptures. He especially excelled in explaining Apostle Paul's epistles, to whom he was particularly devoted. He willingly and readily gave explanations for the epistles, so much so that he was always mentioning the words of St. John, as though the apostle were living and breathing in him. For this reason, St. John implored God to reveal his mysteries and to confirm if his explanations of the epistles were pleasing to the apostle Paul. Hearken to how God dispensed his answer. Once, the emperor was moved to wrath against a certain palace official. The emperor confiscated the man's property and ordered his execution. The official, having no other place of refuge, made haste to the saint. However, at the hour that he arrived at the patriarchal residence, he was unable to find the bishop free. The bishop, however, was notified of the official's arrival and related to him that he expected to be free about the hour of compline, so dinner time. Afterward, St. John informed Proclus, his disciple and the future bishop, that upon the official's arrival, he was to bring him quietly to his cell. Night had fallen, and promptly at the hour of compline, the official appeared. He found Proclus and said that he had an appointment in the bishop's cell. Already acquainted with this information, Proclus went toward the bishop's cell to announce the official's arrival. Having found the door shut, he was thinking there was no one inside the cell. He then peered through the little opening in the door. He observed the bishop sitting and writing. A bald man of venerable aspect, who was over John's shoulder, was bent over and speaking into his ear. Having seen this, Proclus presumed that the visitor came from abroad to speak with the holy bishop. Proclus tarried for a long while, waiting for the man to exit. Seeing that he had not yet come out, Proclus went to the court official and said that it was not possible to see the holy man, for a visitor was speaking privately with him. Nonetheless, the official wished to wait a little longer. His need to see Bishop John was great. At length, he sent Proclus again to the bishop's cell. Proclus fell in with his wishes and went again, only to see the same man with the bishop. Proclus returned somewhat piqued because he could not find the opportunity to usher the court official, and because that other man had entered unannounced without making an appointment with him. Proclus again waited a little longer and was distressed for the court official. He then went again to have another look. Once more he observed the same man speaking with the bishop. Now he perceived that the bishop was extremely intent on what the visitor was speaking into his ear. Meanwhile, time was passing. The signal was already given that it was the hour of Orthros, Matin, so he had been up all night. The saint then rose up and went into the church. He was neither made aware that the court official came, nor that Proclus observed him with a visitor in his cell. The following day, the court official came again. His need was extreme to meet with the holy man. Proclus went to inform the bishop that the official came. Again, he witnessed that bald man speaking into the bishop's ear. St. John appeared engrossed with what he was hearing. Proclus gave his word neither to eat nor to close his eyes until he should learn who that fellow was that entered and what he was seeking. It drew onto the third night. The court official came and enjoined Proclus to speak to the bishop about his case. Proclus said to him, "Be not grieved. Tonight he is alone, for I have kept a close watch, and no one else has entered. Thus I shall go and speak to him." Proclus therefore went again. And O thy wondrous works, O God! He beheld the same bald man speaking with the bishop. He waited again, but that man in no wise came out. He returned to the official and said, "Go and entreat God to help thee in thy need, because even now as I see it, it is not possible to converse with the holy bishop today, or even tomorrow, until God dispenses otherwise on thy behalf." Thereupon the court official went to his house, saddened on account of his unhappy circumstances. Morning came, and the saint remembered the court official who had been told to return. He asked Proclus about the court official. Perhaps his matter was corrected? Proclus answered, "He came, despota," which means master, "and waited 3 nights here, but he was unable to meet with thee." The saint said, "And how come thou didst not come and tell me about him, even as I commanded thee?" Proclus replied, "I did come, my despota, 5, even 10 times, but it was not possible to speak with thee, because a certain reverent-looking bald man was standing over thee, speaking into thine ear, and I did not wish to interrupt his conversation, for I observed thou didst give great heed to what he uttered." The saint asked, And who was this? And who was that person who was speaking? Proclus answered, My despota, who that man was, I know not. Proclus then went on describing the man. When he happened to look at the wall opposite where the bishop had his writing desk, there was an icon of St. Paul on the wall. Proclus took one glance at the icon and understood immediately that the man he was describing was already depicted in the sacred image, and exclaimed, The man with whom I saw thee was like unto the apostle Paul, whom thou hast in the icon before thee when thou dost write. St. John then realized that God and St. Paul already had hearkened to his prayer and enlightened him, and that it was God's will that he should expound upon the apostles' epistles. St. John then continued writing homilies which are extant today, that is, the 14 epistles of St. Paul, which are a great treasure for the Church of Christ. St. John then attended to the official's case, which he pleaded before the emperor. The matter was rectified, and the court official was reinstated to his former honor. St. John gave most of his sermons in the Cathedral of the Holy Wisdom, Hagia Sophia. However, he also preached in the Basilica of the Holy Apostles, the Little Anastasis Church, or at other churches and martyr shrines. Okay. Yeah, so I think there's let me pull up a picture. We still, his ear is still preserved. Yeah, let me share my screen. Yeah.
There it is.
So his ear was made holy by receiving the commentary on the epistles from St. Paul.
Wow.
From the Apostle Paul.
Yeah.
And those commentaries are absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, they're great.
Yeah. Now I'm really dying to read them. So I just are you done?
Yeah.
More?
I also have the Paschal homily. I would like to share that, if that's okay.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah. Let's hear it. Yeah.
Let me share this screen. Yeah. So this is read in every Orthodox church I know of. Reads this on Pascha,
Okay.
the night that we're celebrating.
Are you going to share the screen?
I'm trying. I'm still a boomer over here sometimes, Shari.
I'm sorry. I'm all of a sudden I'm fading. I was up at like 5 o'clock this morning. So
Okay.
Stupid.
The Easter homily of St. John Chrysostom. Paschal homily, yeah. If any man be devout and loveth God, let him enjoy this fair and radiant triumphal feast. If any man be a wise servant, let him rejoicing enter into the joy of his Lord. If any have labored long in fasting, let him now receive his recompense. If any have wrought from the first hour, let him today receive his just reward. If any have come at the third hour, let him with thankfulness keep the feast. If any have arrived at the 6th hour, let him have no misgivings, because he shall in no wise be deprived therefore. If any have delayed until the 9th hour, let him draw near, fearing nothing. If any have tarried even until the 11th hour, let him also be not alarmed at his tardiness. For the Lord, who is jealous of his honor, will accept the last even as the first. He giveth rest unto him who cometh at the 11th hour, even as unto him who hath wrought from the first hour. And he showeth mercy upon the last, and careth for the first. And to the one he giveth, and upon the other he bestoweth gifts. And he both accepteth the deeds and welcometh the intention, and honoreth the acts and praises the offering. Wherefore, enter ye all into the joy of your Lord, receive your reward, both the first and likewise the second. You rich and poor together hold high festival. You sober and you heedless, honor the day. Rejoice today, both you who have fasted and you who have disregarded the fast. The table is full laden. Feast ye all sumptuously. The calf is fatted. Let no one go hungry away. Enjoy ye all the feast of faith. Receive ye all the riches of loving kindness. Let no one bewail his poverty, for the universal kingdom has been revealed. Let no one weep for his iniquities, for pardon has shone forth from the grave. Let no one fear death, for the Savior's death has set us free. He that was held prisoner of it has annihilated it. By descending into hell, he made hell captive. He embittered it when it tasted of his flesh. And Isaiah, foretelling this, did cry, Hell, said he, was embittered when it encountered thee in the lower regions. It was embittered, for it was abolished. It was embittered, for it was mocked. It was embittered, for it was slain. It was embittered, for it was overthrown. It was embittered, for it was fettered in chains. It took a body and met God face to face. It took earth and encountered heaven. It took that which was seen and fell upon the unseen. O death, where is thy sting? O hell, where is thy victory? Christ is risen and thou art overthrown. Christ is risen and the demons are fallen. Christ is risen and the angels rejoice. Christ is risen and life reigns. Christ is risen and not one dead remains in the grave. For Christ, being risen from the dead, is become the first fruits of those who have fallen asleep. To him be glory and dominion unto ages of ages. Amen.
Amen. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's pretty moving to be in the church at night with candlelight.
I still have to get.
The
I
priest
have to.
is
We'll see if I can get it this year. If I can get Pascha in, I haven't been yet.
come to Utah. Come to Utah. Come to Pascha with me. We've got a guest room. You'd be welcome to my house. Come for all of Holy Week. You can stay here Holy Week. I'm planning on taking Holy Week off. We'll go to every service.
Oh, that would be amazing, Jeremy.
Come on down. You're welcome. You're invited.
That would be something. Yeah. Well, I'll think about it.
Okay.
That'll be my life. I'll be just taking in liturgies all over the world.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, yeah, come down here for Holy Week and Pascha. That'd be amazing. We'd love to have you.
So I did a quick, because I had a feeling when you were reading the story, I was like, I'm looking at the year and I'm going, wonder if St. John Chrysostom was associated with, or not associated with, but influenced by Origen. And he was. And that what did they call it? Council that they held to ban him.
To anathematize him.
Yeah. I'm just gonna.
Wait, to banish who? To banish Origen or to banish St. John Chrysostom?
The Origenist crisis or controversies. And let me just see here. Okay, glasses are necessary. Let me just. I might be talking out of school here. Let me make sure this is right. Oh, come on. It tells me it's on this page, and then it doesn't let me find it. Sorry, everybody. I just I'm gonna have to look. I'm gonna have to look better. I just did a quick search. The AI now we have this wonderful AI overview on Google.
Wow, that's crazy.
That John Chrysostom's connection to Origen was used against him at the Synod of the Oak in 403, and this synod resulted in his banishment and deposition. I wondered because of his exegesis, right? Because Origen is the father of hermeneutics. I don't know if you knew that or not, but developed the whole thing and exegesis, and it was a it was fairly new study at the time. So, anyway, but
something else that was kind of a. Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I have to dig into it a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, something else that was kind of casually mentioned or very briefly mentioned, he was involved. So he was alive when, or I think he was born right after it happened. Julian the Apostate tried to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. He was, so he was trying to appeal to the Jews, and he wanted to, so he invited them all back into Jerusalem. This was right before St. John Chrysostom, but St. John Chrysostom basically gathered the stories from people who were there and who saw what happened and put together the story. And let's see, I think there's an account of it that's pretty interesting because so this is something that not many people know about, but it's honestly why some Jews are not Zionists. Like some Jews don't believe that they should rebuild the temple because
Jacob Federecci doesn't. Well, I don't know if he doesn't. He's not a Zionist anyways. But
right.
Anyway.
Yeah. So because of some of them are aware of this story. I think all Jews are aware of this story, but this is the reason why some of them are not Zionists. Let me share my screen because this is actually really interesting and I would like to share it. And it is related because St. John Chrysostom gathered it. Let's see. Right. This one. Okay. Yes. Let's see. Yeah, this will be good enough. This is a small enough account of it. It's short. Can you see? Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Though the emperor Julian the Apostate, did I say Julius? I meant Julian, I'm sorry.
No, you said Julian. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Though the emperor Julian the Apostate hated and oppressed the Christians, he manifested the benevolence. So he was just a little background on Julian the Apostate. He was friends with Constantine, and he was really angry that Constantine had made Christianity the state religion, and so he wanted to make it pagan again. He wanted to make paganism great again. So, and he was trying, in order to do that, he was also trying to find favor with the Jews, and so he sent out a big letter to the Jews inviting them back to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. So anyway, so though the emperor Julian the Apostate hated and oppressed the Christians, he manifested benevolence and humanity toward the Jews. He wrote to the Jewish patriarchs and leaders as well as to the people, requesting them to pray for him and for the prosperity of the empire. In taking this step, he was not actuated, I am convinced, by any respect for their religion, for he was aware that it is, so to speak, the mother of the Christian religion, and he knew that both religions rest upon the authority of the patriarchs and the prophets. But he thought to grieve the Christians by favoring the Jews, who are their most inveterate enemies. But perhaps he also calculated upon persuading the Jews to embrace paganism and sacrifices, for they were only acquainted with the mere letter of Scripture and could not, like the Christians and a few of the wisest among the Hebrews, discern the hidden meaning. Events proved that this was his real motive, for he sent for some of the chiefs of the race and exhorted them to return to the observance of the laws of Moses and the customs of their fathers. On their replying that because the temple in Jerusalem was overturned, it was neither lawful nor ancestral to do this in another place than the metropolis out of which they had been cast, he gave them public money, commanded them to rebuild the temple, and to practice the cult similar to that of their ancestors by sacrificing after the ancient way. The Jews entered upon the undertaking without reflecting that, according to the prediction of the holy prophets, it could not be accomplished. They sought for the most skillful artisans, collected materials, cleared the ground, and entered so earnestly upon the task that even the women carried heaps of earth and brought their necklaces and other female ornaments towards defraying the expense. The emperor, the other pagans, and all the Jews regarded every other undertaking as secondary in importance to this. Although the pagans were not well disposed toward the Jews, yet they assisted them in this enterprise because they reckoned upon its ultimate success and hoped by this means to falsify the prophecies of Christ. Besides this motive, the Jews themselves were impelled by the consideration at the time that the time had arrived for rebuilding their temple. When they had removed the ruins of the former building, they dug up the ground and cleared away its foundation. It is said that on the following day, when they were about to lay the first foundation, a great earthquake occurred, and by the violent agitation of the earth, stones were thrown up from the depths, by which those of the Jews who were engaged in the work were wounded, as likewise those who were merely looking on. The houses and the public porticos near the side of the temple, which they had diverted themselves, were suddenly thrown down. Many were caught thereby, some perished immediately, others were found half dead and mutilated of hands or legs. Others were injured in their other parts of the body. When God caused the earthquake to cease, the workmen who survived again returned to their task, partly because such was the edict of the emperor, and partly because they were themselves interested in the undertaking. More often, in endeavoring to gratify their own passions, seek what is injurious to them, reject what would be truly advantageous, and are deluded by the idea that nothing is really useful except what is agreeable to them. When once led astray by this error, they are no longer able to act in a manner conducive to their own interests or to take warning of the calamities which are visited upon them. The Jews, I believe, were just in this state, for instead of regarding this unexpected earthquake as a manifest indication that God was opposed to the re-erection of their temple, they proceeded to recommence the work. But all parties relate that they had scarcely returned to the undertaking when fire burst suddenly from the foundations of the temple and consumed several of the workmen. This fact is fearlessly stated and believed by all. The only discrepancy in the narrative is that some maintain that flame burst from the interior of the temple as the workmen were striving to force an entrance, while others say that the fire proceeded directly from the earth. Whichever way the phenomenon might have occurred, it is equally wonderful. A more tangible and a still more extraordinary prodigy ensued. Suddenly the sign of the cross appeared spontaneously on the garments of the persons engaged in the undertaking. These crosses were disposed like stars and appeared the work of art. Many were hence led to confess that Christ is God and that the rebuilding of the temple was not pleasing to him. Others presented themselves in the church, were initiated, and besought Christ with hymns and supplications to pardon their transgression. If anyone does not feel disposed to believe my narrative, let him go and be convinced by those who heard the facts I have related from the eyewitnesses of them, for they are still alive. Let him inquire also of the Jews and pagans who left the work in an incomplete state, or who, to speak more accurately, were able to commence it. So, anyway.
Interesting.
I thought that was interesting, and not many people are aware of that.
Right.
St. Julian the Apostate tried to rebuild the temple, and God was not having it.
Yeah. I'm putting a link in here.
Sweet.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, well, that's, I mean, what a work ethic that man had, eh? All the work that he did.
St. John Chrysostom?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to definitely have to read some of his commentaries.
Oh, yeah. They're easy to find online, too, which is great. So, yeah, they have this basically they're all homilies. I mean, he did write books, but most of his commentaries were just homilies. So he was giving homilies in church, and people recorded them. I mean, didn't record them like.
Yeah, but he did
like,
all of Paul's work, right? You said.
Yeah, he covered all the epistles of Paul. He covered Matthew, the Gospel according to St. Matthew and St. John. And then he also did the Psalms, and he did a commentary on Genesis.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Have you read them?
I've read the one on I've read the one on the Gospel of St. John. I've read the one on Genesis. I've read the homilies on Genesis, and I've read some of the homilies on the Psalms, and some of the homilies about the epistles, but not all. But he covers all of the epistles, which, for our Protestant friends, you should check out the ones on Romans, because you might have a very different experience of reading the book of Romans, or reading the epistle to the Romans, after you hear what St. John Chrysostom has to say about it.
Oh, I have to look now. Yeah.
Anybody want to join us and talk? Hello, Joy. Hello, Matthew. Hello, Dawn. Hello, Cassandra. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. St. John Chrysostom is one of my heroes. The account of his life in this book, the whole reason I got this book was because of the account of his life. And it's like 150 pages in this book. By the way, St. Martin of Tours is also in here. Yeah. And just so powerful. I mean, when you hear the details of his life, he's so humble. It's very moving. And he was brilliant and very humble at the same time, and very spiritually advanced.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah. Someone I remember mentioned in an early episode, like, because we were kind of covering a lot of martyrs at the time, and they were like, I wish there was a saint who was like a great teacher. And St. John Chrysostom is definitely one of those. So like I would like St. Basil the Great, St. Gregory the New Theologian, and then St. John Chrysostom. Just
St. Gregory of Nyssa too. And
St. Gregory of Nyssa.
Yeah.
St. Ephraim the Syrian.
Yeah, I haven't read anything from him, but I've been wanting to.
Well, I per Jonathan's instructions or advice, I read Hymns on Paradise. But that's one that you can just pull out and read over and over again. You never get to the bottom of that one.
And the Life of Moses, I started, but I haven't finished it.
Yep, I read that one.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to join. Nobody wants to talk to us.
When is your Thanksgiving? I wanted to ask you.
November 28th. We're celebrating on the 30th because our kids have some other commitments on the day itself.
Right.
But
basketball. You're doing you've got a divided attention there, Matthew. So it's the end of the month.
Yep.
Just want to know, does it conflict with our? It's on the weekend, right?
No, it's on a Thursday. So no, we're good. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. No, we're
very nice.
I don't know of any upcoming barriers or obstacles. God willing, we'll keep doing the show. We'll keep cranking it out. We'll keep sharing.
Tuesdays are a good day because nothing happens on Tuesday.
Yeah, great. Now it's the Lives of the Saints Day.
It's Lives of the Saints Day. That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, this has been a great joy to me. I love this project. It's really great.
Me too. I'm learning all these saints and I can't remember their names.
That's okay. The stories are more important than their names.
Yeah. Yeah. And like Eugene said last week, the stories are just they're so fantastic,
Yeah.
They do feel like fairy tales in a way,
Oh yeah, yeah. They're definitely hagiography, right? Which is
Yeah.
different than a biography. I
Hmm.
mean, it's we talked about this before. The way an icon is different than a photograph is the same way that a hagiography is different than a biography.
Right.
It's like you're emphasizing the aspects, the patterns of heaven that are revealed in the saint. Oh,
Nice,
Parlato's
Matthew.
going to
Yeah,
come
be
in.
fun to join us.
That'd be great to catch up.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got such a stack of books here, Jeremy. It's just pathetic.
I hear you. I understand.
I've
It's
got
hard.
I've got this one that I need to read. Oops. There goes the stack. Right here. That I'm dying to get in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there
Yeah,
he is.
that's the life of Saint Roman Braga. Hey,
Mhm.
it's Mr.
Yes,
Parlato,
and
everybody.
if
Watching
I
basketball.
remember
I got
if
a
I
basketball
remember
right here.
if I remember correctly, Dawn said John, was it you, if you're here still, that spent time with Father Roman Braga? She
Wow.
actually got to meet him.
Wow.
Something I hope I have that right, Dawn. Just correct me if I don't. Oh, here we go. Josiah Trenham has a particular affinity for Saint Chrysostom. Nice.
Writing his dissertation and dedicating decades to studying, teaching on the saint, I came to adore Saint John via Father Trenham's work. Yeah, Father Josiah's. Yeah, I mean, you know, when you have the apostle whispering into your ear on the commentary, that's a pretty good sign that it's worth reading.
His homilies on the epistles of St. Paul.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just
you're
have
basically hearing St. Paul's commentary on his own epistles. It's great.
I'm like 90% sure that he was the saint I chose for my confirmation, but I went so far away from my tradition for so long that I can't be 100% sure.
Do you have a piece of paper or anything?
Oh, I wish. I might could investigate via some parents or via my parents, but
do you get a baptismal name too, like in the Catholic Church? Like your patron saint's name? Because I that's my Orthodox name is Seraphima.
Yeah, shame on me for not knowing, but I do know that the confirmation aspect is kind of the adult conscious determining sacrament, and I know I did pick a saint, and I know I picked a Saint John because I had a little cousin born at the very same around the same time, and being the youngest, I always wanted a younger sibling. So all the younger cousins around me, I was such a pseudo big brother to them. That's how I get it where you can kind of thing.
Right.
I love the detail there of, first of all, I didn't know he was so close to, it was Saint Basil.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know he was so, and then it struck me very interesting. It was very interesting that they both kind of ducked out into this monastic lifestyle, but both were then called upon to be ordained in the hierarchy of the church. And he said he did as much as he could to help Basil out in that regard. And I found that very kind of I guess it just struck me as very selfless. I mean, I haven't got to think about it very much. It's the first time I've heard of the story, but anyways, that was one of my favorite parts of what I got to hear tonight.
Mm-hmm.
They basically had to trick him out of the cave to get him to come down. He did not want to be the bishop. I mean, he had been living in silence. So after St. Basil left, he had been in silence for 2 years in the cave. And they came and basically they tricked him. I can't remember what they used. It was just like they said somebody was sick and needed a blessing, and would you come down? And he was like, okay, I'll come down. And then the emperor was there and was like, you're the bishop. And he's like, so yeah. But he came in. So the account that I shared didn't really talk about this, but he came in and kind of cleaned house, because at that time, like, the bishop was pretty cozy with the emperor, and
It
and
sounded
lived a
like there
pretty,
were a few of them that were cozy.
yeah,
according to
they lived a pretty wealthy lifestyle. And he came in, and he'd been living in a cave, and he was just like, no, I'm not doing that. So he like he sold a lot of stuff. He sold a lot of the furnishings, and he lived in, like, instead of there was a big palatial home for the bishop, and he like lived in one little room of it. And he didn't, his stomach had been kind of wrecked by fasting so much, so he couldn't eat very well. And so so it was a big thing to like invite the emperor over for dinner all the time and throw these huge, imperial meals. And he just didn't do it. And that's what started making the emperor's wife really mad. Like, because it was like, she liked the show of it. She liked the pageantry, and he was not about that at all. And so that's kind of what originally got him on her bad side. And then she kept finding more reasons to be angry at him.
Yeah, but even that little detail, though, that strikes me as even though someone who's not as knowledgeable as I'd like to be, that strikes me as a very relevant and reoccurring pattern of, because if you could just frame the pageantry as corrupting the actual telos and actual purpose of the position and of the hierarchy. I mean, as a Catholic, that's kind of all throughout the history of our church, right? That's very much to put on the critical lens, at least, like that. That's very much something that plagued our tradition.
Let me share. There is a really great book that's an account of his life, so you don't have to buy this huge tome that I have. Let me find it right here. Here we go. Let me share this. You might want to, if you do have especially your confirmation connection with St. John Chrysostom, but even not, this book is really great. So it's made by St. Anthony's Monastery down in Arizona. They print it, and it was translated by them as well. So it's really good. Let's see, it's 224 pages, but this is a much more detailed account of his life. So if you felt, interested and curious about learning more about him, his life is absolutely beautiful and amazing.
Yeah.
Something else they didn't mention is that he did get his tongue cut out at the end of his life as well. So St. John Chrysostom, the silver-tongued, his tongue was removed in exile. And then, he was forced to march.
Right. And they mentioned, or in the bit I did get to hear, you mentioned how gifted he was at oration, right? So kind of.
Oh, yeah.
Benefits.
Yeah. Well, his homilies were extremely popular. And so, like, the church was just packed. So at that time, just to give you a frame of reference, the Hagia Sophia could hold between 5,000 and 6,000 people. And when St. John Chrysostom was preaching, it was packed, and they had over 500 priests there to serve the Eucharist.
Oh,
it was just, it was an insanely large, crazy divine liturgy. But yeah, he would pack the house because people just loved his homily so much.
Yeah. Yeah, you never want to pack the house, because those corrupt political and ecclesial powers, they don't like the guys that pack the house. They don't like
they like it if they pack the house by being vain,
Well, they will seek to co-opt that.
Yeah, well, the guy,
gift.
if the guy that packs the house is the guy that doesn't necessarily agree with your lifestyle,
right?
That's a whole.
Yeah, there was one homily where he was kind of ripping on the widows for dressing too nicely and wearing makeup to church. They would wear these big ornate headwear to cover, like head coverings. It was like big hats, just to draw too much attention. And
how the political power kept the church hierarchs close too, right? Because hearts and minds, people. That's what that is. And
that was kind of the spirit of the Orthodox approach to governance, was symphonia. Right, right? Where so it's the double-headed eagle. I'm trying to find a copy of that flag, and it won't come up anywhere.
Yeah, but I'm thinking about not necessarily from the church's side of the story, but the political.
Oh yeah,
Like the political people in political power, they need the blessing of the church in order to get away with anything, right? So,
right.
I mean, which would explain why some of the people at the council he didn't like them because they were corrupt.
Right. Yeah.
And
exactly.
who marched him? Who marched him around and who cut his tongue out? Wasn't the pagans?
No, it was the emperor.
Like, yeah, I think.
So this is the flag of the Byzantine Empire, and it was the symbol of that. It was a two-headed eagle to rule over the people. So there was the king, the emperor would defend them physically, and the bishop of Constantinople, or the bishop of of your diocese, would protect you spiritually. And they would work in tandem. So the bishop was actually tonsured by the emperor was tonsured by the bishop, and the emperor had a special place in divine liturgy, like a special place on the altar where they would stand and participate in the liturgy. I mean, they were just there kind of as a part of it. So it was definitely like very tightly linked.
Oh, yeah, in every civilization.
Yes.
In every civilization, the god and the emperor were always closely linked.
Well, and to even go more modern in our secular age, it's like in some of my political philosophy thinking, it's like we have this secular religion that is, and it gets very circular and paradoxical, as sometimes it does, as often it does. But it's like this religion of identifying as that without religion, right? And it's yeah, I see you smirk there. It's this because, anyways, I just thought that was a great point, Sherry. It's like that's how it's always been. And I think it is today, as buried and as mutated and as deformed and perverse as it is. There's two heads to the eagle, but it is one eagle. It is which. Go ahead.
I'm not trying to stir up shit or anything, but I asked an honest question today to a friend. Like how close is democracy to demagoguery? Because there are stories in the Hebrew scriptures of the people who want a king, right? We want a king. God's like, you don't need a king. If you have a king, this is what he's going to do to you. He's going to ask you for all these things. He's going to force you into military service. He's going to get taxes from you. He's going to, you don't really want a king. Yeah, we do. We want a king. So God's like, all right, have one. Right. But then as it turns out, the king that God chooses is just a little shepherd boy. Right.
Yeah. And a little shepherd boy who will not arise to a political seat, right? And it also lands too for me is that you don't get around kings. The modern Western instantiation of king is the democratic process, and so where I think it lands for me is. You said how close is democracy and demagoguery?
So my logic there, Matthew, was how much do we play God when we choose the king?
Yes.
That's the question that I was asking myself, right?
Yes.
Are we actually being God? Because the king that God chose was
no, and that
shepherd boy who was running away.
That lands right where my cognition was going, because this quote, and it's still stuck in my head, from one Benjamin Boyce he says, demagoguery without personal relationship, or no, excuse me, any moral assertion without personal relationship is demagoguery. And that
Yeah.
that has just been going around my brain for weeks now. And so
Right.
it's where I land is this framing of democracy can work for a time for a people uh who are not conflicted and bifurcated among a metaphysical moralistic normative vision. It's like that it can, we saw flourishing, there's no denying that. But once you have raised that up to your king, and that king has been confabulated into saw off the metaphysical branch from which it stands. It's like, well, now you see the world we're in today. It's to be kind of blunt, it doesn't work well. We have, this is the American thing. We have two views on the world. We have two views on the telos of this people. We are in a culture war. There's lots of people that are very unhappy with what happened a couple weeks ago in our political process.
Well, here's the thing. What the image that I get when I think about it is that when you have lost the, God as the highest thing, the divine, the sacred, then you literally lose your identity. And that's it. It seems like that is what happens to the civilization or the culture, or however you want to put it. There'll be a great Grog Country coming out soon, I hope, because we talked about whether or not there was this distinction between culture and civilization. I personally think there is, but
I think there is too.
But so you just get this, it's like fragment. It's just fragments. Everything just fragments, right? It just keeps breaking apart and breaking apart. And it all has to do with identity, because if you don't know who your father is, right, then you do suffer a loss of identity. And you
then you do half measures to pseudo replace that father, and grasp and fight and bicker over your varied identities, right? Because the way I look at it is like this, and not to do buzzwords or anything, because I know me and you, Shari, have much critique over this dichotomy of the left versus right, but and I've been able to whittle it down in certain political philosophical frames to where I think it makes a little bit more sense and is a little bit more eternal, if you will. But it's like, if you remove that let's even take like a very imagistical period. If you were to take that capstone, that which is at the peak, then by definition, now you are at a sub level that is in a disbelief, is fooled to think that, well, no, this something has to be there, and so this is how I see the world, this is how I react, this is my disposition, this is my belief on what used to be how to opponent process to with my brothers and sisters, to orient and navigate forward within that capstone, within that metaphysical unifying hierarchy and framework. Well, by definition, that will be at odds. It's like there was nothing else to do but to fragment. There was nothing else to do. And so for a time being, in what I call the diffuse Christendom, you got to see the remnants of this process, work to a degree. But at the same time, the logical consequences are still the logical consequences, and we sit in them today.
Yeah. Well, and I think, to go along with what you guys are saying, is that they've tried to make the state itself the religion. Like they've tried to make so the Capitol buildings look like temples, and they've replaced sacred holidays with secular holidays. Like we celebrate in America, we celebrate. It used to be Washington's birthday, Lincoln's birthday. Now they've combined those into President's Day. We celebrate Veterans Day. We celebrate the 4th of July. We celebrate, all of these holidays that have taken the place of the lives of the saints and the festival. I mean, the feasts of the church. Those are the feasts of the church. Those are the feasts of the secular state church.
Yeah.
Those are the holy people, like Washington and Lincoln. Those are the saints of America, right? And they've tried to replace it. This is a deliberate move. This goes back to the French Revolution.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where they're trying to replace the state trying to replace the role that religion plays in people's lives with the state. And it just doesn't work. It fails.
As an amateur historian, too, just real quick, I think it's one of the most relevant and insightful historical events to investigate, the French Revolution. I think its fingerprints are all over this reality we are drowning in today.
Yes. Yeah, it's why we have the dumb metric system. I like to just make fun of that every time I get a chance. But really, that was part of it. The metric system is part of the same. Like, they tried to replace the calendar. They had metric time. They had 10 hours a day. They had a metric calendar with 10 days a week. They tried to replace the names of the months. They tried to get rid of the holy calendar. They tried to get rid of the church calendar and replace it with the I am very smart calendar of it's so much easier to do math calendar. But it was, the whole intent was to get rid of the traditional means, like the traditional ways that the church was involved in people's everyday life. And they were like, there's a calendar you can find where there's 10 months in the year, and there's and there's 10 days in the week, and there's 10 hours in the day.
That would have made my winter a lot shorter.
Yeah. But the measurement was part of that as well.
Sure,
the measuring system was part of that, and it was like the measurement was all about like, let's impose it on the world instead of deriving it from the world. We're going to impose the measurement system on the world instead of deriving it from the world.
And I just want to say that the calendar, the days of the week, everything, it's based, it's a sociological calendar. Okay. Right. It's based on it's cosmic. It's in relationship to the cosmos, the earth within the galaxy, within the stars. Yeah. And
yes.
And
it's in the book of Genesis, right? It goes back to
that
Genesis.
It's really on my mind recently, how, like, I don't want to give away the conversation we have, but something that's been on my mind for some time is just how in Revelation, the woman gets chased, the woman who has the child gets chased by the dragon into the wilderness. And I've been thinking about wilderness. What is wilderness? What is the woman? What is the child? Right? And I mean, if you want to just get really like rough with the symbolism, you could say, or something that I came up with actually recently, I wrote this down. Wilderness is a gift economy based on sacrifice. And that insight I got from First Nations, right? Remember the story, Jeremy, where the human being washes up on the shore and all the animals stand around it and go, "Oh my God, this thing is never going to survive."
Yeah.
Right? We're going to have to help it out. So we'll lay our lives down for it. We'll give it our skins, right? Which is actually what it says in Genesis, that, that God garments of skin. And that can be taken many, many different ways, but let's just keep it simple. And First Nations believes that if you can kill an animal, it's because it made itself available to you, right?
Right, as an offering.
So, which is why for them, a story told about sacrifice for your sake, because you are weak just by nature. You don't have fur, you don't have teeth, you don't have claws, you don't have wings, you don't have anything to protect you, right? You can't really, you need to be cared for. And so based on that, wilderness is a gift economy based on sacrifice, right? And so, well, how does the human who lives in the wilderness, how do they have to comport themselves? They need to be grateful.
Mm.
Right. Yep.
Okay. They need
Yep.
to live in a posture of gratitude because nothing, they can't do this on their own, is basically why. They're completely dependent on the environment, on the animals and the plants and the trees and everything around them, right? So that's the wilderness. The woman is the virgin, right? And the child, and Jesus said, in order to enter the kingdom of heaven, you have to be like a child, right?
Mhm.
So what does the woman do? She grabs the child, right? And she goes to the wilderness. So think about it in those terms, you guys. Like, she goes into a place that is ready to lay its life down for her, where she can, and she is that virginal space carrying the child, right? Who is one filled with, in my opinion, this is all my opinion, one filled with wonder, right? And she is one filled with gratitude.
That,
And the wilderness is basically looking after her. It's caring for her. It's Sophia. It's a divine feminine image, okay? And but here's the thing. They get the whole shebang goes into hiding, which is what the divine feminine is. It's veiled. It's hidden.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
well,
But it's
and I
the
almost,
irony too of fleeing from Jerusalem to Egypt, right? They were fleeing the center of the Jewish world to Egypt, where they had been slaves. Christ had to flee to Egypt to hide, right? Like that's how inverted the world was at the time. He had to flee to Egypt to be safe, right? And Egypt was also represented the world or wilderness, like you're talking about, right? And this ties directly into what you're saying. It's
yeah,
crazy.
no, it does. Yeah, it does. But it's really been on my mind because I think this is what we're in store for, which I'm actually really excited. Right? I'm excited about it, about the feminine, because also the heavenly city, Jerusalem, is a divine feminine image, right? It comes down from heaven like manna. Yeah. And
where my brain went to, and I'm on my edge here, so be gentle. But
me too, Matthew.
where it landed for me too was in almost this, it to do a deep correlation or a deep connection. It reminds me of Mary in her haste, in her full of grace, just action. And so it's almost like, if you took like even this, we talked about this the other day in voice chat about like the mycelial networks, right? That there's intelligence beyond our strict, rigid masculine categories. And it's like, if you can frame, and look, I feel like I'm even doing a performative contradiction in this, but anyways, let's keep going. If you can symbolically appreciate, there we go. That's a good word. If you can symbolically appreciate what you just laid out, it is almost this holistic organism that at the pinnacle of this intelligent holistic organism is a person. Then you can almost see how that fractals up into realizing that all of this wilderness, this natural world, this cosmological realm can be best interfaced with as a person, right? And as soon as you try and sit there and say, oh, well, here's how this makes sense and that makes sense, it's like you have vivisected it. You have ripped off the veil instead of just this appreciating the imagery and moving forward in that appreciation. right? That's the haste of in which that Mary full of grace moves. And so it it's it makes sense to, because I'll even go one step even deeper with the frame I love to invoke, and I'm very fascinated with it, Greg Enriquez, in that you could almost see that virginal woman, the first instantiation of the feminine beyond that came after Lilith, as not recognizing in a eros driven kind of desire, but a recognizing it that I'm going to see how I can be relevant to everything else. And in that recognizing of relevant to everything else, I'm just going to move in sacrifice. I'm just going to go out into the wilderness, and I'm going to trust this cosmological organism.
Right.
This,
Which is what Mary says to the angel.
Right.
Let it be unto me. Right?
As thou sayest. Yeah.
That is the ground
Mm-hmm.
of the divine feminine. That's the posture. Right. It's receptive. It's like just whatever's coming my way, just let it come. Right.
Mm-hmm. It's this paradoxical desire of desiring to give up my desires, my egocentric desires.
But just imagine
self-empty.
a world.
Yes, self-empty.
Yes, imagine a world like that, where that's when you take your weapons and turn them into plowshares, right? Because everybody says, "Let it be unto me." Everybody says that to each other. And that's the kingdom. That's the kingdom.
Well, and that's very I believe it's Solzhenitsyn Peterson talks about, where you take on, in your own fractal way, you take on the stance of Jesus and recognize, Solzhenitsyn came to the conclusion that it was his fault. That what the catastrophe of the gulags and of
that's the Jesus prayer,
Yes. Yes.
No, who told me this? Maybe it was Jeremy, but someone told me about this monk who said to his elder, he was a disciple of an elder, and he said, Father, I need you to pray for me. And he said, Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me, a sinner. And the monk's like, no, you got me. I need you to pray for me. And he said, Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me, a sinner. Yeah, and the monk said, no, Father, you don't understand. I need you to pray for me. He said, I am. Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me, a sinner, because I am you, right? Let it be unto me, right? This is like, that is the posture of the divine feminine, which is Sophia, which is the wisdom of God. That is God's wisdom, where his strength is made perfect in weakness.
Gosh, okay, here we go too. On my edge here, it's almost, because I really do appreciate that First Nations tale and how it in my framing, it's like this fractaling of a wise organism, right? A wise, personable organism. And it's almost as if the wisdom of God is epitomized in this self-reflection that man can do in a very unique way, but it is not limited to only us. There is intelligence that we don't recognize as us. And so it's almost as if in that reflection, you take that reflection as wholly unique, that is the fall. That is the burden that man is almost stricken with from its first instantiation. It's to take that gift of this consciousness to be even so broad, into in a very kind of Sheldrakean, Rupert Sheldrake way. It's like thinking that is limited to just us. It's like there's
Yeah,
there's
right.
a way to self-empty, right? There's a way to
Yeah.
recognize the gift that we have, but then to also in a humble stance say, but what can I know and how can I judge that I am the only entity of it?
Mm-hmm. Well, St. Gregory of Nyssa says that the cosmos is a womb.
Mm.
And that when we die, we are actually being born. Okay. So,
Yeah.
and that is the image over the altar, right? Of the Theotokos, right? That is
and when they're preparing the Eucharist, when they in the morning when they're cutting the bread into the different parts, they're doing that under the icon of the nativity of Christ.
right.
Right. So it's
a birth.
It's being born, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Christ, when he died, it was being born.
And it's in the proper orientation. It's in the proper stack.
Right.
Yeah, and it's fractal, right? So,
right.
Like it's that Christ is being born, but he's being born in you, and you're being born in the world, and right. It's like it just keeps like we had a conversation once a long time ago, and I was like, it's just wombs all the way down, you guys.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, and as you guys were talking, I was also struck by kind of so you were saying, like, when Theotokos just said, "Let it be unto me as you have spoken," the fulfillment of that was her at the foot of the cross.
Mm.
Right.
Yes.
Like, that's the self-emptying.
Mm-hmm.
Because Father Turbo talked about this recently in a podcast.
It's also an unknowing, right?
It's
living in the cloud of unknowing. Like,
yes,
that's really what it is. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and also, well, I don't think I won't go down that road. Anyway. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. It is that surrender as well, and letting it be. And it's that, because if you try, like when the disciples fled, it was out of self-love. It was because they could not endure the sight of watching their Lord suffer. Right. But it was their own suffering they were avoiding. It was their own suffering that was uncomfortable that caused them to flee. And that was the difference. The Theotokos and the other women stayed there because they didn't have that self-love. They weren't trying to avoid their own suffering that comes from watching someone you love suffer.
And that's like Martin Shaw said to me in that conversation that I had with him. He's like, it was the women. Like, it made him emotional, actually, in our conversation. He said, they stared it all down, right? It's always the women. And that's not just happenstance, And then, but I heard this recently, and for the life of me, I can't remember where I heard this, but I thought it was really interesting. Christ, the only disciple at the cross is John.
Right.
Okay. And Christ entrusts him with his mother.
Yes.
And it's John that writes the mystical gospel. Right?
Yeah.
Right. Mystagogical gospel, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and John,
that is
and
like, that is the
with John for the rest
gospel,
of their life.
Actually. Huh?
Say that again. I'm sorry, what?
Well, it's a Sophianic gospel. It's the
marriage gospel.
It is.
It's the mystical marriage gospel.
And that's what Jesus was saying to him. You're entrusted with this.
Right.
To circle back a bit, I think where we're going is still relevant. This is something. Again, I'm on my edge here. Then put on my tombstone. He always said, this is why we have to have conversations. This is something I struggle with and I'm totally torn. Though I think it's why I find first of all, it's why I'm so enamored with John Vervaeke, and I'm so enamored with what takes place in this goofball community, is that I feel there's a way to have this kind of discourse slide into a vivisection and a phileuonokia and a dogmatic engagement, but at the same time, it's these ideas that I wish to discourse about, to discuss. But you cannot. But see, here's the needle that must be thread, is that there is a style, there is a stance in which to comport oneself in these conversations, and that is the golden thread that matters, and that is what allows disagreement and variation to the multiplicity to coalesce into a unity. And I think that's what TLC is, right? It's like you can't say that we all agree about every little distinction. More times than others we agree, and more times and some other times we disagree. But it's this loving, humble stance of how I want to interact with Shari and Jeremy, and for me, it's like this both end, because I'm such a nerd and want to have this high need for cognition. I'm fascinated about these topics, but it's like, and honestly, it's one of the most dumbfounding aspects of how I stumbled into participation here is I thought I was just joining this intellectual, just pursuing further this intellectual journey, and it's like I got smacked upside the head with like, hey, buddy, there's so much more here. There's humans here to relate to. There's ways of learning and ways of interacting that are beyond the, hey, I disagree with this point here. Here's why here's my reference. Here's my my citation. Here's blah. It's like that to cognize it in that manner is to miss what is going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Amen.
And I think that's that divine feminine that we're kind of gesturing at, right? It's this.
Well, it is.
Space.
It's space, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what the feminine does. The feminine creates space.
Right.
That's what a womb is. It's a space, right?
Yeah.
She gathers the fibers into a thread.
Right. And it's all, exactly. And it's also hospitality, it's invitation, it's all of those things, right? But here's the other thing that I think is so interesting, because Matthew Pajot said that his next book is on renewal. And renewal is brought in by the feminine. Right? And what I found so fascinating about the end, the last bit of his conversation, was that he said he wanted to explain why he doesn't. First of all, the guy said to him, "Well, can you tell me about the Theotokos?" And he said, "No, I'm not talking about her."
Mm-hmm.
Done.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it. And then he said, "I need to explain to people why I don't talk about Christianity."
Yes, I remember that exact part. Yes.
And he said, "I don't talk about Christianity out of respect," which should tell you something about how he sees it.
Mm-hmm.
It's also feminine. Okay.
But I think that's highly relevant to what I'm gesturing at, is because we talk about a lot of this stuff, but guess what we do also? We have the utmost respect for the topic and for the other humans that we're engaging with in wrestling with that topic.
Right.
It's like we are boldly, humbly, as best we can, grappling with that balance.
Right. And in the process, you are becoming, which is why Gregory of Nyssa says we're just embryos in a womb.
Mm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
We're being formed.
Right.
By one another in dialogue. Right?
Yes.
And in physical proximity to each other.
Well, and that's where I was going to go too with the Vervaeke quote. He says, a non-theist, he says, if there's a God, if there are gods, I believe they're in dialogos as he tries to do here. And what I think he exemplifies, one of my favorite aspects of that just remarkable intellect, is in which how he comports himself, is the virtue that he exemplifies every moment you've ever seen him on a screen. You cannot point to me. We'll do wagers. Show me the clip where John Vervaeke has revealed some nasty side of himself. I'll pay up the wager. I'll pay it up because I've seen as much of his content as anybody.
No.
Yeah.
No, I'm also admirer of his work. I think he's I'm impressed with his very, I don't even know the word, but it's very I can't think of the word, but
I always
like
love
he's very genuine in his
his seeking.
His seeking. Yeah, he's very
and,
earnest. That's the word. He's earnest in his seeking, and that's a beautiful thing.
And honest. And honest.
Yeah, and honest. Right. Yeah.
And Jesus
my dad said that one time to me. He said, if you have a car that has an engine, you can always push the brakes. But if you have a car that doesn't have an engine, there's nothing to work with there. Right. So, no, you can always steer and you can always hit the brakes, but with a car that has an engine. But if the car doesn't have an engine, and I see that in him, I see that engine. It's that constant, longing.
And his contemporary, and someone that I think we all very much appreciate, Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, though he does have moments of online kind of, for lack of a better word, cringe. One of the things I've heard from multiple different sources who have witnessed him in person is the way he treats an individual when he's on these, huge tours, and how he is able to earnestly and honestly engage with each individual at each moment. And so,
you know what? I just heard him in a conversation with a bunch of entrepreneurs, and he was talking about how you set up a business. It was a very boring. I didn't watch the whole thing, but here's the thing that, just in what Matthew's just mentioning there, he said that everyone who works for him, right down to the last bodyguard or whatever, security guy, wherever they go, they have to be nice to everyone. To the waiter, to the chambermaid, to the receptionist, to the stranger on the street. They have to be absolutely gracious, loving, and kind to everyone at all times. That's a stipulation from Peterson himself, from the big boss, right?
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at that sometimes.
but I think that stipulation only works, for lack of a better word, because of the exemplification. And like I said, it's one thing that I think, you can critique him a little bit, and it might be just exposure, and it might just be personal flaw, when it comes to online dynamics in certain content. But it's something that it's, in a weird way, I find it analogous to the love.
Vervaeke does a beautiful thing he does by loving the speaker through listening. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's in an analogous way, it's similar to how I fell in love with this place in Vervaeke. Is like, I was like, oh man, here's some real robust, insightful nerds. Here's a real robust, insightful world. And then boom, in like an after charge, it was like, whoa, look how virtuous this community, look at the virtue this community will exemplify. Look at how virtuous he engages with every encounter on the various YouTube conversations. It's like, I think, where Peterson is able, where that fractal of embodiment may work is because it is embodied to the nth degree in him. And that's even with, his, in the Jordan Peterson category, even with, maybe some of his more rash adventures in the online world. And I think he would even own that. I think he go ahead.
It's still honest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's still honest.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know,
Well, it reminds me too of the great quote from Vervaeke's wife is that what did she say? She said she told Dr. Vervaeke that I think you're the most Christian person I've ever met. He's not a Christian.
well, I love it when people don't realize that they're Christian.
Yeah.
Oh, now you're getting into one of my pet theories, and it goes into to take and it's funny because I think I take Vervaeke's framing and some other minds, but to be simple, I think I take Vervaeke's framing almost more seriously than he. And it's so funny because one of his big pet his big what are the hobby horses is performative contradiction, and there's when the meta modern kind of wave hit almost a year ago and trickled into this year and stuff. There was a kind of a landing point that, or at least in my mind, that meta modern frame could only work from a Christendom or from a diffuse Christendom. And it's this to try and be concise, I don't think you can ever escape your religio. I literally don't think you can. And so it's this idea that John can call him can self-identify as a non-theist, but all that he engages with in his Zen Neoplatonism, by the way, cards on the table, I engage with a lot of Zen Neoplatonic frameworks and beliefs. At the end of the day, I think he does it from a standpoint of within, right? It's almost obvious on its face. He does that from within a religio of even if you want to call it a diffuse Christendom. It's like you cannot escape it. This individualistic kind of pick from the global perennial paths on the one true mountain of metaphysics. It's that is impossible. That is even only approached and cognized from someone sitting in a Christendom religio.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that landed, but I've been thinking about that one for a long time.
Mm-hmm. No. Yeah. Yeah. You know, when Job had that conversation with Paul Vanderklay years ago now, and he said things like, I don't know what's happening to me. You know, Job from the Netherlands, he had a conversation with Paul Vanderklay. And in the comment, I think he had 3. On the first one I wrote, Job's a Christian and he doesn't even know it yet. That was my comment.
Well, and now to even be so bold, Dr. John Vervaeke hinted at it in his recent conversation with Pajot and Paul Vanderklay. He said in some words, he said, perhaps my journey on the philosophical road ends up in me homing myself back in Christianity. And my heart fluttered. I don't have the word. I felt so. From the journey.
He's also said he misses it. I've heard him say that. I've heard him say he misses it. He misses the community. He misses the culture. You know.
May be blessed.
And and I've heard him say that if he had to choose, he'd become an Orthodox Christian.
Yes, I have heard him say that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think his when he went down to that monastery and met with Bishop, I can't remember, Maximus and some of the other monks who were there. Like, I listened to all those conversations. It was absolutely fascinating, and it was really interesting to see John light up when they were like able to finish his sentence for him, and he was like,
"Yes,
like, you guys know what I'm talking about." And they're like, "Oh yeah." They were right there with them, right?
To be the perspectival and the personal aspect for me is like my journey. I was not identifying as a Christian when I found Vervaeke's work. It was a year and a half into it until I like to say I was able to make the final jujitsu move that it seems that John is hesitant to make. And so for me, I've never met the guy, right?
Surrender.
It's
It's
weird.
not jujitsu, it's just surrender. That's it. You
Yeah,
just
Yeah.
finally realized, okay, you
touche.
win.
No, that actually that lands 100%, Jeremy. That final jujitsu move was a surrendering. It was a
Mhm.
surrendering in a very Pajovian way, but like,
Mm.
and that's also kind of very relevant too, right? It was this robust cognitive science Zen Neoplatonic framework that I was able to seamlessly navigate into, and then also at the same time with Pajot right on top being giving me that what I call the biggest phenomenologist or the most I don't know the deepest phenomenologist I ever encountered. Right, I think he takes phenomenology as seriously as anybody, and so
Yeah.
in this, to be a bit, on my own personal journey, it's like from that moment there was kind of this disconnect, and so when I heard him say that, yeah, my heart just I was thrilled. I was like, man, I was like that surrender, to use your frame, that surrender is in the back of his mind. That
Mhm.
surrender's there. It's like it
But
felt
here's
like
the
this. It
thing.
felt like this. I was not so alien.
Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
You know,
Mm.
to surrender, you have to trust.
Yes. Yes,
Right.
that's the problem. Is I couldn't find anything I could trust. I could see through it almost immediately in some cases.
And
And
the deeper the
yeah.
wound, the
Mm.
longer the
And all that is relevant to Vervaeke's story, right?
I
Yes.
know, and
Yes.
that's why
Yeah.
I'm saying it, because
Yeah.
and so what you have to do is you have to go into the space um in the space can't threaten you, right? You're exploring the space. You're just a visitor to the space. You're wandering around looking at the space. You're talking to all the people in the space. Good faith conversations with all the people in the space. But the whole time you're building trust,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
right? So, and when that happens, you surrender. You just do.
Mm.
When
Yeah.
you have
Yeah.
established a relationship of trust with a community, you surrender to it at some
Yeah.
point. You have to, otherwise you're cynical, right?
Right. Right.
Otherwise you have to retell yourself a different story and go away from it.
Well,
It's like,
and I think that's the explicit roles that a Paul Vanderklay, John Pajot, Bishop Maximus have been playing for
exactly.
and then even to take it to kind of broaden it too is like I'm reading this book Clash of Civilization by Huntington, and it was one of the things that just it almost glimmered when I read it. It just
Mm.
shined through the text, and he was talking about, and this goes back to Vervaeke's kind of perennial ritual of the other, of the stranger, right? And this goes to me of like, love thy enemy is a trusting that the enemy can be the enemy, right? It's not this. It's not this. It's not this surrender to say, hey, I will be defeated or co-opted or subverted or coerced, but it is this surrender and trusting to say, hey, they are different, but in my trusting, we can still commune, we can still relate as a tribe and another tribe, and the myth of the stranger, the myth of the other. I mean, this goes back to the axial age. This goes back to a huge paradigm shift into what is known, and then it gets refined and it gets uh, exemplified so beautifully in the Christian paradigm shift, as goes my framework of Christ coming about and changing forever the realm of what man can and should be, and to say to love the enemy is this deep trust in the enemy, right? And that go and that's a refutation of like to be an enemy is to distrust them, right? It's this very paradoxical thing, and so it's to say no, you are still my enemy, but I will trust in our relationship. I will trust in my worldview, in my paradigm, in my I don't know if this is the right word, but my eschatological navigation, that we can coexist, and perhaps in kind of a heavenly Jerusalem way, if that trust can be shown so robustly and so blatantly that it is undeniable, that is when you get all the kings of the world to contribute to this heavenly Jerusalem. That is when they are different kings, yet they are contributing to the same entity, the same mythic paradisio
Let me say
of
this about the heavenly Jerusalem. If it's a feminine symbol, which I think it is, the bride, right? It says that the nations of the earth will go in and out of it.
Mm.
They will move in and out of that divine feminine space, that divine feminine spirit, right? Of openness and hospitality and gift and kenosis and trust, and right. So that's where that's what they'll be moving in and out of. And Joy says, for me, the moment of surrendering felt like a gift. That's why we say saved by grace.
Yes.
Okay. That's why Christians say that.
Well,
And
I very much identify with that. I can very much relate with that. With my
because we know how hard we struggled against, right? We know how like personally how I know how hard I've struggled against something.
Yes.
And then to suddenly lay down your weapons, right? But I did want to add something to the loving your enemy thing, because I think especially in that case, what happens there is you don't lose sight of their divine humanity, the image of God. See, like when you consider someone your enemy, you dehumanize them.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can do all kinds of things to them, and it doesn't matter to you, right? They're not human. They're just scum or garbage or whatever, disease.
Rodents.
But if you love them, then they, like, you can't know something to be what it is if you don't love it. Like, I can't know what a flower is if I don't love it.
So good.
Okay. So to love your enemy is to always keep in mind that they are God's, right? Divine human, right? Humanity.
The image that kept coming into my mind while you were talking, Matthew, and also you, Shari, is this Looney Tune. Did you ever watch Looney Tunes when you were a kid, Parlato? Have you seen any of the Looney Tunes? Okay.
Yeah,
there's this one. There's a one where there's a sheepdog and there's Wile E. Coyote, and one's Sam, one's Ralph, and they show up in the morning and they're at work. Good morning, Ralph. Good morning, Sam. They're both standing in the clock in. They're clocking in. It's the wolf. I mean, it's Wile E. Coyote and the sheepdog, and they're just like, it's like in the break room in the morning, before work starts. And they're clocking in, they're drinking coffee, reading the newspaper, sitting at the table together. And then it's like, oh, it's about that time. And, Wile E. Coyote goes out, hides behind the tree. Sheepdog comes out, sits on the hill with the herd. And then the work whistle blows. Time to go to work. And they fall into those roles. And they're, Coyote's trying to steal the sheep and eat them. And the sheepdog's outsmarting him every time and kind of beating him up through the day, and it's this constant rivalry and fighting, and it's the enemies, but they know each other. They're familiar. We've already been shown that they know each other. They're friends, but they have roles to play.
Yeah, and it's like the same thing with Sylvester the cat. And and Tweety Bird.
Yeah, and then at the very end of the day, the horn goes off. Woo! And they both just stop and they go back in the break room and they're checking out, and Ralph, the coyote's all beat up. And he's like, see you in the morning, Sam.
No, that's it. That's a perfect image for for where my cognition went to, because where it was taking me with Sherry's point was, it's almost as if we are called to remember the beyondness of our human categories, but we do live nevertheless in these human categories, right? Because where I was taking was like, it made me want to drill in onto what exactly is the enemy. And I go back into this with my evolutionary biology stuff of like most primal tribes, their word for the tribe is man, is relative, or very
Yeah.
relevant to the human. And so that which is not of the tribe is not human. And then you see what dehumanizing rhetoric and dehumanizing movements have done, a la look at the 20th century. And so it's almost this paradox, or this imposition to strive beyond those categories, though you can never fully escape those categories. There will always be enemy, but the Christian story says to remember how to see the divine spark in them, the creation, that they are too in the creation of God.
Yeah. And a lot of mythology in indigenous cultures and elsewhere, I'm just not as familiar. A lot of mythology has to do with incorporating the foreigner, the other one, right? The other thing, whatever it is. And yeah, it's interesting. It's funny because there's several different bands of indigenous people on this side of the river. Shuswap and Carrier and Chilcotin, and their name in their own language, like their band name, Honey Gutin, for example, is the Chilcotin people. In Nimaya, it means the people.
Yes, the people. Yep,
they all mean the people.
Yes, that's what I was. Yes, that's exactly what I was getting at. Yes,
the humans. But that's how, that's how nested they are in creation, right? Like, and we've even lost sight of that.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Our culture is very Gnostic. It's very
and we're inside. Like,
well,
that or it's one or the other, right?
Well, it's Gnostic and it's Luciferian. It's both.
Yes.
We are.
Those are the same thing in my book. But yeah.
Okay, touche. But, well, I guess I was just saying there's a denigration of the reality, but there's also this praise that which we can transcend and master this reality.
Master it. Yes. Predict it. Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I can see where that's how you could frame that, one and the same, or very, very close.
So. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's a deep well, but isn't that so much fun?
Well, yeah, and this to circle back, it's fun. It's fun when you have, and this is, I mean, I beat this drum a lot, so I'm getting less and less nervous when I do. It's this magic that I think us goofballs have rediscovered is, God bless Paul Vanderklay. God bless Peterson and Vervaeke and Peugeot, and it's these ideas, because what I want to say is there's a way to discuss these things not in this manner, not with this, and like I said, even though we've had so much agreement here, I know that me and Shari will disagree on certain. I know that me and Jeremy will disagree on certain, but as long as we keep this spirit of loving and caring and attending and listening in the most thorough sense to the differing perspectives, they can converge, but not in a categorical, now I agree with your assertion and I agree with your framework. They can converge in a.
It's not transactional.
Yes.
Right. It's not like, okay, I'm going to trade this with you, and you give me that thing that.
Oh,
I
and
want.
mine's better. So now I get right. Yeah. Yeah.
No,
No,
one of
it's
the
agape. It's agape. It's
Yes.
loving one another into being.
And,
Right?
and in that agape, it's this, I'm going to stand, I'm going to have this existential stance of, I may say something and Jeremy says, hey, well, this is how I see it. And that may put me back and say, whoa, I've never seen it that way. Right. It is that ability to, lack of a better word, in the fractal down, kind of a self-sacrifice of saying, hey, I'm presenting how I see and what I think, but I'm open to you, to y'all, here's the Southern.
Okay, so remember how I started out with wilderness is a gift economy based on sacrifice?
Mm-hmm.
So we're also in the wilderness, which is a feminine symbol, in my opinion, right? Which is like a space.
potential space. Yeah, potential. It's like a, yeah.
Yeah. And I was just reminded when you were talking about Graham's perception of the community online as sending gifts ahead.
Yes.
Sending
Yeah.
gifts ahead. And that really resonated with me when I heard it. I was like,
Same here. Same here.
So
Me too.
That was beautiful.
that was so good. Yeah.
Well, and it also reminds, go ahead, Shari.
No, you finish. I'm going to have to wrap it up here soon because my husband and I have to wrestle the the range extender so he can watch TV.
Okay.
Right.
That's fine. That's fine. Well, it just, and when he said that, and I remember that, I remember experiencing that. I don't exactly, was that in his talk?
That was when I did the
Bird,
after the Northwest
yeah, the bird's eye view. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it reminds me too of, I think Vervaeke's just very subtle and sophisticated framing of agape, of giving before this forgiving of present the gifts prior to the engagement. And even you can even go into like this technical of the because in the political waters and political discussions I have plenty of critiques, and one of the little tricks I've learned is to acknowledge the agreement, to acknowledge the accuracy and the robustness of their assertion before I then say, but here's what you didn't see. Here's where I think you could refine. Here's something you haven't considered. And so it is, in a way, it's this, and I think it's totally relevant for what I was saying a second ago. I think, and perhaps it's what, perhaps it was some of the reason you brought it. It was like engaging with another human entails there's going to be difference. There is no look, now you're going to hear me talk about individualism. Ha ha ha. There is no congruent to Matthew. And so the optimal way for Matthew to engage with every human is to stand in a way that, this is the Jordan Peterson wisdom that, I think is right. This is the human condition, so profoundly wise. And I recognize that, and something I struggle with so much in myself, and it might just be my own foibles. It's like, listen as if you can learn from anybody.
Yeah, right.
And I do, and give myself some, I do better in moments.
Here's what I would add to that. Listen to someone as if you could learn something from them, because first of all, you can. And I believe that every encounter, and I think Esther Meek said this because Jonathan Demir just clipped something, and I'm like, yes, she said every encounter changes you. It's transformative.
Yes.
Yeah. We're porous. Yeah, for sure.
Right. But I would also, okay, wait, what did I want to add to that?
Listen as if someone can teach you.
Yeah, and I just freaking lost it. Oh well, it's okay. It wasn't important, I guess. Oh, here, I know. And the thing that I'm always doing is, what's God gonna do? What's He doing now? Right? I call that my expectant hope, because I'm fully aware that He's always doing something, right?
Yeah.
So whenever whenever I happen to meet someone, I'm like, oh, what's God doing now? Right? Like it's nothing is just, my world is literally enchanted because of it. It is. You know, when I recently took Saint Seraphim and put him in the woods, and when I went out there, this bird flew up from the bulrushes that I was walking past. And it was a bird that I didn't get a clear look at because I didn't have my glasses on, but it was of a size, and the way that it flew and where it flew from was unfamiliar to me. And it flew up and then it landed on the ground, not far from me. And I'm like, that's a weird thing. Birds don't do that. They go up into the tree, right? And it wasn't a duck. You know, it was, and it kept going. Anyway, and it happened to me. And then I kept walking. And then it flew again because it was following me, it felt like. Landed on the ground. My dog was walking. I had 3 dogs with me. One of the dogs, Lily, was walking, and I saw, and I'm like, oh, it landed right in front of Lily. And what's she gonna do? Right? And she stops and she looks at it. And then the bird goes to another spot and lands on the ground. And it's just like a little bit bigger than a robin, right? And the whole time I'm like, what the heck? What kind of bird is that? And I didn't have my binoculars, didn't have my glasses. And then I kept going to the spot where I was going to take the icon, and there it appeared again. And then it landed on a hill, and it was just staring down at me. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And then afterwards, I was like, wait a minute. I was carrying Saint Seraphim. Of course. Right?
Yeah.
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 And so yeah. And here's the I'll tell you another little cute thing. So I have Saint Seraphim on the tree, and my dogs come over, and my dogs are livestock guardian dogs. So to stare at anything directly is threatening. Right? So they don't stare at my sheep. They sit beside my sheep, and they have them in their peripheral, right?
Right.
And they don't stare at the geese. You know, they walk past the geese like that. And they both came and they sat down sideways to Saint Seraphim. And then I said, I looked at them and I said, are you guys looking at Saint Seraphim? And they looked at me, and then they looked at him, and then they looked at me again. And I'm like, that's crazy. You know, because I said his name, and they were like, yeah, we're looking at him.
Now you get into one of my favorite hobby horses on just the magic of dog intelligence and how we co-evolved. And people will call me crazy in this moment. They for in a rough way, they probably understood what you were talking about and what you were doing in all the different implicit ways they can ascertain. You were carrying it. You guys were on this walk. You set it down. The dogs are they're ridiculous in their own participation in our cognition and experience. They are man's best friend for a reason. We do not conquer the globe without them and projectiles.
Our dogs pray with us.
Yeah.
When we go to the icon corner, the dogs come right in and they sit down and they look right up at the icons with us, and they just sit there and hold still the whole time. They just both of them do it.
Do you think those are the only dogs to ever do that? That's where it gets funny. It's like, imagine how many dogs have done that with humans. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
most cultures don't let dogs in the house, so probably not very many.
Okay, there you go. Touche. But my point is
no, I know. I just had to make that comment.
Participating in the patterns of your experience.
Yeah. No, it's and it's to Shari's point. You know, again, and there's stories about, you know, animals in the lives of saints all through the history of the saints, right? So I totally agree. I just had to make the comment about the weirdness of having
I love
dogs in your
that.
prayer
I love
room.
that. And,
Yeah,
I,
it's okay. It's
I
not
was
the church,
doing
so it's fine.
every Saturday morning. I did a sociology class at 10:00 with Michael Martin for the last, I don't know how many, 6 weeks, maybe longer. And the second last class, one of the ladies in the class typed in the chat, "I love how Shari's cat always joins us for sociology class." And I looked in the background, and there, sure enough, and then I realized, yeah, she sits in that same spot, and she can literally see the screen.
Oh wow, that's fun.
But there's also a spirit there. There's
Yeah.
a spirit in the room, right?
Mm,
And they
Adam.
feel that, like if my husband and I sit close to each other on the couch, our cat jumps in every time, and she starts drooling. I'm like, "Are you feeling the love, Celeste?"
Oh,
Cats are the only animals allowed in Orthodox churches.
interesting.
Yeah?
Yeah, cats are allowed in Orthodox churches. You can't bring dogs.
Really?
You can't bring birds. You can't bring anything else. But cats can be in an Orthodox church.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, guys, I'm gonna call it a night. I'm gonna finish watching my basketball.
Yeah,
and go
you
to
do
bed.
that. We have to
Yeah.
go too. But
Sherry's husband needs to watch TV.
I love you guys.
love you too. Thanks for joining us, Matthew.
Yeah,
Of
thanks
course.
for coming in. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
It's always a joy to talk to you and listen to you.
Yeah. Don't be a stranger, you two.
Yeah, same. Yeah. We'll be in touch.
All right. Well, that was wonderful as usual.
Yes, indeed. St. John Chrysostom. Pray for us.
Yeah, I'm going to dig into some of his homilies. I got them saved now on my iPad.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm so excited to introduce you to that. Oh, and speaking of introductions, have you had a chance to watch The Island yet?
No.
The Russian film.
No.
Okay. For the audience, if you have not watched it's the full version is on YouTube.
You can
It's
put it in
Russian.
the chat. You can put it in the chat. It will stay in the chat.
Yeah. Okay. I'll
It'll
do that right now.
totally.
Hold on.
Yeah. Put the link in
This
there.
is the special gift for those who lasted this long. This movie changed my life. This
I gotta
movie
watch
was one of the first.
Maybe I'll watch that after this.
This. I didn't really understand what Orthodoxy was, and I watched this movie, and it helped a lot. And now that I've been Orthodox for a few years, I watched it again, and it was like watching a whole different movie because I understood so much more of what was going on. But it was my first introduction to like what it means, true humility and true repentance. And absolutely beautiful story.
Okay.
Beautiful story. It's a Russian movie, so it's in Russian, but it has great English subtitles. It's deep, it's rich, it's sad and funny, and it's like the whole medley of human emotions. It's just very well done, very beautiful film.
I'll watch it right after.
Yeah, I couldn't recommend it highly enough.
I will. Yeah. All right. Well, good night, Joy. Good night, Donnie. Tony, if you're still here. Who else? It's Cassandra. Dawn, maybe.
Emily came in earlier. Good night, Emily.
Yeah. I don't know who the hillbilly historian is. Who's this? Do you know?
I don't know who that is. Good night, Matthew. Enjoy your basketball. Thanks for coming on. Good night, Dawn. Good night, Cassandra. Good night, Moon.
Good night, Moon. All right. Good night.